The show, well, one of the hardest truths about Israel and the West Bank is that the reality on the ground doesn't fit neatly into the binary so often used to describe it. From afar, especially in much of the Western world, the conflict is frequently reduced to slogans and moral shortcuts, or especially, unfortunately, perhaps the most annoying of all, algorithm driven outrage by social media influencers who really have no concept of what's going on overseas. And all of this strips away the very history, security realities, and human consequence of the actual war itself. What gets lost in the nuance is, of course, the fact that fear, grievance, responsibility, and trauma all coexist on all sides, really, not just one. And that's another part of this is the nuance means that this is not an isolated conflict. It's a very complex conflict. And joining me now to talk about it, and specifically about his recent experience in Israel, is Samuel Miele, host of My Generation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Wyatt.
Let's just start out with what you made of what the Israeli ambassador was saying there before the break. You've been to Israel now. Hearing what he says, does it make sense?
You know what? It does. And I think one of the things that he said that I agree with the most, I'm not really too sure about the Canadian ambassador's portion or the Canadian MP portion in Israel. However, the first thing around nuance, that's one thing that I learned. I was in Taba, the last Christian village inside of the West Bank. I was in Bethlehem, which is inside the West Bank. I was in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And I got to learn a lot. I got to talk to teens inside of West Bank, teens inside of Israel, got a lot of different opinions. And I think nuance is the best way to explain it, I would argue.
What do you, I mean, the nuance piece is certainly there, but you talk to Israelis, they will say, nope, it's not nuanced. They will say, we're the only democracy in the region. We can't have a state like Hamas existing next to us. You talk to Palestinians, they say, nope, this has always been our land. We want the land to exist. What did you get from being there on the ground as to that stark divide?
Well, you know
between the
what?
two?
It's funny because in the West, that's what we think the opinions are. Whereas in fact, I'll just quickly go into how complex it really is. You've got in the north of the West Bank, Jewish settlers attacking Christians, Palestinians, Muslims, really anybody who isn't Jewish. And then in the south of Israel with citizenship, you have nomadic Muslims attacking nomadic Muslims, killing each other over small portions of land.
Yeah, so there's more. There's
much
conflict than
more.
what
And
people
so,
emphasize.
you know, when we went to the West Bank, we had a wonderful guide. I'll keep him anonymous, but he was really just frank in saying, look, I just want peace. I just want to work in Israel. And since October 7th, he hasn't been allowed to.
But that's fair. So, I mean, I think it's kind of disillusionment and apathy that people are starting to experience in that region. They're just so frustrated with both sides. But there are definitely people who fall super extreme on one side or the other. And one kind of illustration, you mentioned people in the West kind of misconceptualizing what's happening there. People here in Canada, in the United States, specifically on the Palestinian side, I think, arguing for things like a two-state solution. But then you talk to people on the Palestinian side, they say, no, we don't want a two-state solution in terms of the people who are actually there. You talk to Israelis, they don't want it either. So what did you get from being there as it relates to what people actually foresee? What do people want? What are their desires to put an end to the conflict?
You know what's funny? Very few, even in the Middle East, know the right solution. Unless you're an extremist, we spoke to one Israeli who said we should annex the West Bank. We also spoke to Arabs who had said, well, we don't just want a two-state solution, we want our land back since 1948, 1947. So when you take those two sides, it kind of eliminates all of the conversation in the middle. We spoke to an Arab Muslim who has interviewed the leader of Hamas 23 times, who said, no, I don't know what a solution is.
But so, okay, so if we look at this from the perspective of Israel doesn't want Palestine to be an independent state because they fear that they would re-elect Hamas. That is in many ways, I don't want to say conceptually proven, but that is what polls have said. Polls have said that Palestinians would vote in Hamas as their
Well, look, in
legitimate government
2005,
if they could.
2006, and 7, Israel pulled out.
So, but that's fine. But that's what I'm getting at is I'm saying if that is genuinely what the people of Palestine are looking for in terms of electing Hamas, then it's obvious why there cannot be a two-state. But then if you look at the other end of that, Palestine and Palestinians don't want a two-state because they, in many ways, just want that. And I'm not saying all Palestinians, but certainly some of them and those associated with Hamas advocate for the complete kind of eradication of Israel. So, I mean, just quickly, about 45 seconds or so here, but how is that divide understood within Israel on the ground?
I'll be quite frank, the divide is not well understood. And I spoke to Israelis, and most of them do not have a solution And they don't even entertain the idea of like annexing the West Bank or annexing Gaza. That's not even a conversation. What the government's view is may be different. I don't know. And I just choose not to speculate on that. But from what I see, it's a lot more complicated. And I think in the West, we just need to lead with understanding that we cannot cast naive judgment without fully understanding all of the nuances, which is impossible to do. So, in my opinion, leading with compassion for both sides and all sides is the most important thing.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Samuel Miele will be back with us after this. Stay with us.